What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Mi Casa Su Casa on American Freedom Radio. As usual, I want to thank our patrons and our donors who have helped make our radio show and our network possible. And of course, I want to give a special shout out to American Freedom Radio. Make sure that you go and check out their website at AmericanFreedomRadio.com. You can follow them on Twitter as well and on Facebook. You can go to their website to hear awesome podcasts and videos, with people just like myself who are simply concerned with the truth and nothing but the truth, even if the truth is slightly inconvenient, which we all know the truth tends to be at times. So, definitely go check them out. We're getting started a little bit late, so I do want to go ahead and go into it. As you all know, of course, we're going to spend the first hour and a half talking about this Syria extravaganza, the censorship by Facebook and what direction we need to move towards. And I got some insider information about a recent Rasmussin poll that was not released to the public. I'm going to explain why in a second. But first, I want to talk about the Syria thing. Now, as you all know, I've been not necessarily out of the loop, but I have been off the map. Well, I was on the map, but I just wasn't in the state I'm usually in. I was in New England talking to some awesome people who are trying to do some great things and give people with felonies a second chance. So I haven't gotten the report on this, but I like to wait a little bit. I like to see how things develop. And of course, as usual, Israel does not disappoint because they decided in the middle of the night that they were going to attack a Syrian base. There's not really any logic or rationale or rhyme or reason to it. They literally just woke up in the morning and said, you know what? We're going to attack the hell out of them. Mind you, an investigation has not been conducted. Mind you, we have no idea if Assad's government actually did commit those attacks. But Israel just woke up one day and said, you know what, we're going to do what the hell we want to, and we're just going to bomb a country, fly over and just bomb the hell out of them. It's funny because if Syria decided to launch and attack Israel, could you imagine the backlash? You don't have to imagine it. We would be in a war. I'm telling you what would happen. It's not a question of what would happen. We know for a fact that we would be at war with Syria right now. The country of the United States of America would be at war with Syria right now if we decided to bomb Israel for no reason other than alleged attack. Mind you, Israel actually, it's not like kind of maybe, they're actually, holding an entire country hostage right now in Palestine. And whenever they get attacked for it, for whatever reason, it's never, oh God, why are we surprised that we get bombed when we kind of hold people hostage and, cut off their drinking water and kill innocent, peaceful protesters. But like I said, if Syria were to do the reverse to Israel, all hell would break loose. But I think what's also important to discuss is this idea that Assad, who is acclaimed to be a military genius by the Western world, he's very deceptive and very, he can deceive you, and he's a military strategist, and he's a genius, and he's this evil, super crazy authoritarian dictator who's only obsessed with winning a war. Now, people, Assad already won his war. I don't know if you all recall this. Coincidentally enough, the moment that the U.S. decided to leave, we actually saw an end to the Syrian war. Coincidentally, once again, ISIS somehow pulled out. Well, it's crazy how every time America leaves an area, ISIS just tends to leave with them. And every time America goes to an area, ISIS tends to kind of follow them. Except for Israel. Israel had like one proclaimed attack by ISIS, which is really weird, by the way. Saudi Arabia never gets attacked by ISIS. Oh, it's really weird. I just started to notice this pattern. This pattern of, you don't see Dubai attacked by ISIS. You don't see Saudi Arabia attacked by ISIS. I think Israel has claimed maybe one unverified ISIS attack. Qatar, same thing. Seems to me that ISIS is only attacking countries that the United States has interest in. Is that a coincidence or nah? Maybe? Probably? Nah, it's not a coincidence at all. But it also needs to be discussed, once again, the fact that Assad won the war already. Now, if he's this evil military strategist, this evil genius that's concerned about winning and concerned about maintaining his throne, why would he then endanger his regime, his reign, by attacking his people and bringing the one country back into the war that he doesn't want any problems with? Like, rationally, that makes no sense. It makes no sense. Now, there are some, by the way, that believe ISIS is responsible and that they're blaming the Assad regime. And I would lean towards that, mostly because you all know how I feel about ISIS. If you don't know, you should understand that ISIS is a creation of ours. They're funded by us. So in case you're curious, they are. You can look up Columbia studies, Princeton. I mean, I was in the military, so I'm telling you, I've literally seen ISIS training using special forces. If you ever heard of selection, that's the process you go through when you're getting ready to go into special forces. They use those training methods, the team building, the log training, like they're American forces, or at least American trained. Hell, Osama bin Laden was American trained, so it shouldn't be that far-fetched to you. But my point is that, have you ever noticed that there's a huge problem with the whole ISIS theory in Syria? It's something that often isn't discussed. And even it kind of like slipped my mind a little bit too. Because I want to believe that ISIS, I guess it's more comfortable to believe that ISIS is there to wreak havoc. They don't have a goal. They don't have an end game. And it just makes more sense that way, right? It makes everybody comfortable to believe that ISIS is just this ridiculous, this crazy group with no goal other than to wreak chaos. And actually, the terrorists, specifically, if we're going to talk about Middle Eastern terrorism, haven't y'all noticed something? Terrorists don't just randomly attack regimes. If we look at Israel, we can look at Hezbollah or Hamas. People have become incentivized to be terrorists because of what happened to their land. If we look at Iraq, people were incentivized to become terrorists because of the, imperial empire coming to do whatever they want. Same thing with Libya. Same thing. You get what I'm saying, right? So, Assad, at this very notion, represents everything that they supposedly are fighting for, right? Autonomy. Fighting for autonomy and sovereignty against and from the American empire. Assad is literally the person that they would want to be helping. And if you understand what terrorism is and where it comes from and the patterns that we see with terrorist attacks, ISIS, by every measure of Middle Eastern terrorism that we've seen in the past, actually would be helping Assad. But for some odd reason, it seems as if ISIS is attacking Assad's government and now attacking the rebels fighting against Assad's government. it's a very confusing situation. But in the beginning, remember that we were there because of ISIS. ISIS supposedly has attacked, on record, Assad's forces, and they've also attacked the rebel forces. And I know it sounds crazy to believe, but in most conflicts, it's actually pretty clear which side the terrorist group is on, the radical group is on. But in Syria, we get conflicting reports pretty consistently. What my point is that it's fake. I'm not saying that the chemical attack didn't happen, because I do believe that happened. But it's a ruse. If you believe that Syria, or that Assad specifically, committed that chemical attack, then you also have to believe that, I don't know, that, Gaddafi wasn't elected to be the chairperson of the African Union. By the way, Gaddafi was duly elected to be the chairperson of the African Union, and he only stepped down because he volunteered to after a democratic meeting, to do what was best for the fate and future of the African nation, or the African nations. Gaddafi stepped down on his own accord to keep the West out. So it's the same way that we are fed BS about Iran. We're led to believe that there's some third world country, that they can never survive on their own, that it's just a terrorist nation full of what do they call them? Insurgents. It's not true. Actually, Iran's pretty modernized. Yeah, it's true. Their economy actually was doing very well before we decided to cripple them for no reason. Still haven't given a reason, by the way. It's insane to me that we are literally having to go out of our way to make special nuclear deals with Iran. Yet we are not at all, by any stretch of the imagination, trying to contain Israel as a power, as a nuclear power, as a military power, as far as intelligence is concerned. Saudi Arabia, we're supposed to be the world police. Saudi Arabia has human rights after violation after human rights violation after human rights violation. I'm sure that's coincidence too. Right? You know, it's also a coincidence. I actually talked about this on my show earlier. I did a live stream about this specific instance. What's also a coincidence is, isn't it really convenient that everybody that we are trying to take out, that we try to institute a regime change, almost 98% of the time, and this is a consistent pattern, right? And if any of you have any evidence or facts proving otherwise, then let me know. But it's always crazy that every time we're trying to institute a regime change, almost all of those people were, I'm not saying that they were angels, but they were part of a revolution to take down a tyrannical authoritarian that was actually put in power by ourselves, France, Great Britain, etc. Gaddafi. Actually, the current president of Chad was a victor in the revolution against the dictator that the United States installed in Chad. We can look even as far back as Fidel Castro. Funny enough, yeah, he was the one who was against segregation. Mind you, whenever we were coming after Fidel Castro in the beginning, we were still segregated. Crazy, right? Because I want you to notice this pattern, because it's important to understand. So like I said, we instituted regime change for Cuba. Fidel Castro was fighting on the side of Nelson Mandela during the apartheid. We fought with the apartheid. You get what I'm saying? During World War II, we spend so much time occupying and defending Great Britain's empires that we barely touch Western Europe until the very, very end. Okay, we can look at Grenada, as I discussed earlier on my show. After Sir Eric, I can't remember his last name, but Sir Eric, he was put in power by Great Britain in Grenada. Then, of course, a revolutionary named Maurice Bishop came through and took over very successfully. So guess what he was about? Oh yeah, socialized healthcare, desegregation, economic liberation, anti-imperialism. Guess what we did with him? You ever heard? I'm sure a lot of you have seen the painting of the accidental bombing of Grenada. Accidental. And we invaded. The United States sent 2,000 troops into Grenada to get Maurice Bishop out of power. But if this guy's for desegregation, is for economic liberation and free trade, why were we trying to get him out of power? Well, if you ask that question, you find out the answer, then you'll understand why they were trying so hard to get Fidel Castro out of power. And he was for desegregation, liberation, of economic liberation, free trade, legitimate free trade. But guess who was in power before Fidel Castro was? Batista, an American lackey. So you start to see these patterns forming. It seems like everywhere that there is a leftist, progressive-esque revolutionary who just wants to see people like legitimate equal opportunity in their country. So I'm sure there's somebody somewhere out there. No, Fidel Castro was evil. Yeah, with all that, socialized healthcare that's literally ranked some of the best healthcare in the country, curing lung cancer, and literally there are people right now in every Western country fighting to get into Cuba's medical school. We can talk about the literacy rate. You want to know what our literacy rate in the United States is? You don't want to know. I think it's maybe 80 to 85%. You want to know what? And that's being nice. Like, if we want to talk about reading at the level that people are supposed to be reading at, I guarantee it's far less than that. You want to know what Cuba's literacy rate is? 99%. So funny enough, the only two countries that have managed to escape forced American imperialism thus far are Cuba and Iran. Funny enough, everyone who has been part of a regime change has either obviously forcefully lost their seat, or no, that's it. Or you're Assad. And then you're Iran or Cuba. Two countries that have huge embargoes. And the only thing that we ever hear about these countries is really what we get from the people on the ground. And for Cuba, it's an even murkier situation because, well, you know what they always say? There's all those people who will hit you with the emotional appeal. My grandma was in Cuba when Fidel took over. It's like, yeah, your grandma probably don't want to tell you she was out here, making money off of the American empire via sugarcane cartels and whatnot. and we get blocked. Information is blocked. That's the most important thing about an embargo. Like, think about it. Hey, you know what we're going to do to show the government that we mean business and we really want to help those people? We're going to put out an economic embargo to make sure that those people suffer, because that's the American way. What? So right about now, if you are not paying attention to Syria and how things are going down, you need to start. Because this is a pattern that we have established since maybe Harry Truman. Yeah, pretty much. It was started with Harry Truman. Funny enough, Harry Truman is probably the reason that we have that the Cold War started to begin with. But Harry Truman was the catalyst, if you will, to the constant regime changes. And of course, it's always been about competition. It's always been about economics. It's always been about a power flex, but the situation with Syria is clear. We will lie and lie and lie and lie and lie until we get enough backing to go into a nation. The problem is, with Grenada, it was easier for them to get away with it. With Cuba, same thing. They could feed us whatever information they wanted to. The shift really started with Afghanistan and Iraq, when we were like, okay, Afghanistan, you might have got us because most of us believed that. So for some reason, like, I laugh at myself now. I was, we were young and we could only base our information off of what news was given to us at the time. But with that, it made so much sense to us that Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan for some reason. And like now we're like looking back like, that shit didn't make no sense at all, did it? Like we killed hundreds of thousands of Afghani troops. Oh, no, excuse me, not troops, just random people. I won't say troops because they weren't well-trained soldiers. They were random people trying to figure out what the hell these imperialists were doing in their country. And then you have Iraq, where we were kind of all like, I guess, but can we at least see proof of weapons of mass destruction? And then if you were like myself, who are one of the people who are genuinely confused, you started looking up who else had not chemical weapons, but nuclear weapons. And then you're like, hold on, but Pakistan has nuclear weapons, India has nuclear weapons, Israel has nuclear weapons. North Korea is constantly oppressing their people. Vietnam's technically still communist, as in oppressive to a degree. Like you start going through the list of people that we could have and should have went after, and things just weren't adding up. And so you have this shift in consciousness where people, when we heard about Syria, when I first heard about Syria, I was like, man, I don't know how to feel about this. This is a very convoluted situation. It was at the time when the information was first being released, it was a very, very convoluted situation. Then you start to realize that was done on purpose. Just like with Osama bin Laden. Well, who's Osama bin Laden? Well, he used to work for the CIA. Hold up, what? He used to work for the CIA? Well, how the hell do you have a terrorist group? And why? Do you know what IED stands for? Improvised explosive device. You know who taught these terrorist organizations how to make IEDs? That was us. It was us, people. It was us. If you look at the material that they use, they even use our materials. Why do you think we know how to defuse them? Because we were the ones who created them. So, this like the situation in Afghanistan with Osama bin Laden was convoluted. The situation in Iraq was convoluted. The situation with Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Jordan is really convoluted because you got to give me 50,000 good reasons as to why we would ever be giving weapons to rebels and terrorists. Unless you're purposely trying to destabilize the region. The situation in Libya, same way. We were fed. Think about the narrative surrounding Libya. It was convoluted as hell. It didn't make any sense. We're like, he's in charge, but he's killing his own people to stay in charge, but he's been fighting for 20 years and he can't be beaten. Because in my mind, if you've been fighting for damn near 20 years and you can't be beat, that means your people are riding out. That's actually one of the first pillars you learn in politics and any political 101 class. The best soldiers aren't the ones who are forced to fight, but the ones who are fighting for the love of their country and for the love of their leader. And most leaders are aware of this. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara aren't successful without the people believing in what they're preaching. Mind you, Gaddafi was the same way. Anti-segregation. He wanted unity. Anti-imperialism and anti-capitalism or crony capitalism. So no, I don't believe that Syria, that Assad is that idiotic that he would bring both of those, that he would bring, the United States and Israel and their wrath back on Syria right after they just won the war. And it's so crazy to me that they literally just won the war and Trump says, hey, we're going to stop funding this nonsensical Syria regime change BS, because that's what it is. And then he's going back and forth, and there's a public fight. And it's funny enough, because I know a lot of you felt the same way that I did about this public fight. I'm like, why are they showing this internal struggle? Because this is not new. The struggle between Donald Trump, his administration, and what we should do with Syria is not new. This has been going on for over a year now. Hell, it's been going on since early 2017. He's been going back and forth with his administration over Syria. From the time we pulled the CIA out when we initially put out the CIA, then boom, we launch a missile into their base. Right? Then Trump is like, because the way that you hurt Syria, like the battle there, the way that you quail everything is you stop sending money. Like, because we have a couple of troops on the ground, but there are contracts, there are deals to be made. People are expecting to get paid, or people are going to start snitching. Seriously. People are expecting to get paid. So when he got up that $200 million, that was worse than cutting off troops. And all of a sudden, in the public eye, there's an internal struggle within his administration, and then boom, a random chemical attack. Okay, I'll bite. So what's Saudi Arabia doing in Yemen right now? Why are we not there? If we are the world police and we're so concerned about these oppressed people, I'm curious. Now, Yemen has, for the most part, had a very authoritative government. Conservative. By the way, that's also another pattern you see with the regime changes that we institute. They always end up with a super hyper conservative, nationalist, religious, authoritarian regime right after we get done. Like in Grenada, like I was telling you about, the same guy's been in power for 17 years. We have no problem with that. Interesting. Crazy how that shit works out, huh? Look at Netanyahu. The guy who was actually about to bring a two-state solution into Israel and Palestine got assassinated, like on the day that he was supposed to do it. Seriously, they had a prime minister who was super progressive, who was trying to bring a two-state solution, and got assassinated. Because we don't want a two-state solution. The United States doesn't want that. The United States needs chaos and destabilization. Seriously. I do want to move on. So I have some insider information from a DC insider. If you all recall, I reported a while ago, well, last week actually, probably, maybe a little bit before that there were some polls that said that Donald Trump's approval ratings were a little higher than many expected. And I'm sure a lot higher than the Democratic Party would like to discuss, which is probably why you didn't see those polls plastered everywhere. In fact, I was the only one, if I can recall, I was the only one that talked about it. I was the only one that talked about it. And that was from a poll that was conducted by 3 different organizations working together, questioning Republicans, Democrats, and independents that were registered to vote. And it was not looking pretty. The 51% for the economy, which is a lot, people. It's a lot. Anytime you get over 48% as a president, that's damn good. Now, this DC insider told me, cause I was explaining to him, like, man, that's a crazy poll. But what I have to tell you is a little bit, he said, it's worse than that. They're going to love this. I told people time and time again, I said, the Stormy Daniels, that's not going to work. You want us to all be surprised that rich, white, elitist men cheat on their wives. And that given the chance to have sex with a porn star, he took it. Gasp. I can't believe it. I would never expect that out of the guy who literally said he would grab somebody by the pussy. Of course, never expect such a thing. In case you can't, if you're listening on the radio and you can't sense my sarcasm, I'm kind of bad at it sometimes, so make sure that you catch up. But I said the Russiagate thing was falling flat and was going to fall flat. Said this. I said, that's not going to win you an election. Think about it. During the Russiagate BS, like when it first started, when it was legitimately at its peak, he still won overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly. So the logic that all of a sudden, because you appoint a special counsel, that because you do all this, they do put on the dog and pony show, make it look like it's a legitimate investigation. The logic that all of a sudden the Russiagate is going to lead to people forgetting that their health care sucks, to people forgetting that they can't find a job, to people people forgetting, that their jobs have been shipped overseas. People are going to forget that because of Russiagate, especially when there's an abundance of information now proving that Russiagate, the real Russiagate, was Hillary and Bill and Eric Holden and Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, and the list goes on. But this recent poll reaffirms that, because in another Rasmussin poll that was done internally, according to the DC Insider, Trump is actually creeping for his approval rating between 55 and 60%. On the economy, he's well around that area too. And in other areas, amongst registered voters, he's even higher. And the numbers potentially could go up. Now, we can debate all day about whether or not those people are right to feel that way. There are some people who have, I'm not joking, there are people who have said they have had no trouble getting employment under Trump's administration. And there is a level of possibility to that. When I say that, I mean, Trump has caused stock markets to rise and fall depending on who you are, Bezos. But when your stock markets rise, I'm not saying that they're taking care of their workers the way they should be. I'm not saying that people are getting the wages they deserve. But what I am saying is that people, for the first time in some of their lives in a long time, are actually employed. And at the very bare minimum, getting the hours that they need in order to get by, which is better than what they were able to do before. On top of that, Trump calling out Jeff Bezos was probably a huge boost in his book. People don't like that guy. He's a CIA troll. As far as likability is concerned, you have to remember that Trump's approval numbers from where they were at the beginning are not going to suddenly drop because he says one more rash, semi-racist, totally discriminatory statement. They're not just going to suddenly drop. That's not how the real world works. If that's where they were, then the people who are that have tolerated that thus far are not going to suddenly disappear. He already won with this. He won talking like this. He literally said, I can grab her right by the pussy. He said this and won an election, people. He said, you know what the poll said? The poll said that I can shoot somebody right there, dead, middle of the crowd. Still wouldn't be affected. That's how good we're doing. And he still won. So the idea that you're going to be able to win simply because you try to make him look like a worse candidate is laughable. And I'm going to be honest with you. The reason why is because I would say, unfortunately, to a degree, a lot of Americans see themselves in Donald Trump. They aren't the best orators in the world. Maybe their grammar is horrible. They've said stupid, things that probably if they had been recorded, they would be probably in more of a hot seat than Trump is at this moment. They see themselves as a potential businessman or woman if given the correct opportunity, like they see Trump. They connect with Trump because Trump isn't cryptic about what he is trying to do within the American government. There is a level of, the cryptic nature to the things that he does. I'm not naive. He steers a little bit. He does a little steering. A lot of steering, actually. But when Andrew McCabe was fired, he didn't hesitate to explain what that means, what that should mean. When he was going under fire by Andrew McCabe, he was very open about how he felt about the FBI and how they conducted investigations, and specifically the investigation into him and the investigation into the Clinton emails up to that point. He was very clear about that. For the American people, that's transparency. This is a different world. We want our president tweeting about what the fuck is going on in the White House. We like that. Crazy enough. Maybe the grammar could be a little bit better. Sometimes he sounds a little suspect. I'll be wondering what's going on up here. But outside of that, people want transparency. Think about it. With Bernie, whenever something goes down, he goes on a tweeting spree. Bernie isn't an idiot either. Bernie isn't an idiot either. So, Tulsi Gabbard, same thing. Ridiculously popular, always tweeting. Tim Canova, same thing. So that transparency is welcomed. Whereas you have the Clintons of the world, the Kamalas of the world, the Cory Bookers of the world hiding out behind single issues. You have Trump calling out people because people do need to be held accountable for the sake of our institutions, and people love that. Trump knows how to manipulate the stock market because he's benefited from it so long. He knows as well as I do it's about speculation. If Trump creates speculation in the market, the stocks will go up and he will take credit for it. And people, because you can call it what you want to, how we're conditioned, they believe that the stock market actually is an indication of how well the economy is doing. And although it may not be, they believe it is. And that's all that matters when you're trying to win elections. I'm not talking about the substantive nature of his policies and his success, whatever. What I am talking about is the fact that the Democrats aren't relatable. My thing, that's what I'm trying to get down to. The Democrats they're so not relatable. It's so bad that you can't even beat Trump because you're not going to call out his policies. They're not. Because much of the establishment side of his policies, they agree with. Notice how they stopped talking about the tax plan? They just talked about that for a little bit and stopped fighting it almost immediately. It's not even important to them anymore. Because the Democrats are getting hooked up from Trump's tax plan. In case you were wondering, they're getting hooked up. They know this. They say, I'm so tired of Trump and his Republican administration doing hold up, you said, I'm getting how much back? Oh my God. You know what? I think I was being a little bit too hasty, y'all. Let me check my account real quick. Seriously. So, the moral of the story is, keep thinking that blue wave is coming crashing down on the Republican Party. It's not. If you combine Trump's poll numbers with the fact that establishment Democrats are cheating progressives once again across the country right now, putting establishment Dems in the line of fire once again of a galvanized Republican base. During midterm elections where Republicans have always tended to dominate. It's not looking well, which is one of the reasons that I was extremely supportive of Tim Canova going independent. Sure, Debbie Wasserman Schultz can run unopposed now in the Democratic primary. But they would just cheat for her. People aren't supportive of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm telling you, I live here. They don't like her. They would cheat for her. So that's one thing that Tim is avoiding. But also, guess what? Went to a debate, last week? Or last month? He went to a debate. He and the Republican opponent showed up. Debbie Wasserman Schultz totally avoided it. Yeah, that's the way to connect to your base and other bases as well to win elections, by totally avoiding any conversation. They're scheduling another debate. Debbie Wasserman Schultz probably going to avoid that one too. Surefire way to victory, I'm sure. The problem is, you do that enough, all of a sudden, the independent and the Republican candidate say, hey, let's do a pact. Let's create a pact against this particular candidate. Make sure that we audit the ballots no matter what. Because now you're creating frenemies out of your inability to see how fallacious your behavior is and how bad of a strategy it is for all the Democrats. No one likes you all right now. Outside of the Hillbots that y'all have on Twitter, that all have numbers at the end of their name, that all use the exact same syntax, people from, supposedly from St. Louis, writing like they're from freaking Sudan, like they've never spoken English before in their lives, only responding with this seemingly preset phrases. Retweets do not equate to victories. A retweet is not showing up at a rally, nor is it showing up at a poll. But the Democratic Party would like you to believe that. Well, I'm telling you, according to this insider, it's not looking good, people. It's not looking good at all for the Democratic Party. So if you are running in a district, in a city precinct, where you can separate yourself from the Democratic Party, please try your hardest to do so, because it is not looking pretty. It's not something you want to be associated with right now. I'm saying if it's a left, right, in the middle type of district, make sure that you're separating yourself from them. Make sure you're talking about accountability. Make sure that you're talking about, moving forward. That you're talking about issues that affect the everyday family, the everyday household. I'm sure I don't have to tell a lot of you this, but what I'm saying is, seriously, separate yourself from that. You can switch over to Crowd Pack from Act Blue. Do it. Stay as far away from the Democratic Party as they can. I'm telling you, top Democratic consultants right now can't find a job. From Hillary's campaign specifically, can't find a job, including Bobby Moog, who's a damn laughingstock now, which is her lead consultant or campaign manager at the time. That was the one who orchestrated the deal with Jeff Weaver, by the way. Listen, I told y'all exactly how the 2016 election was going to end up. Some other people did as well, but the reasons why were they had nothing to do with my emotions, had nothing to do with what I wanted to happen. It's reality. These consultants were trying to project what Americans wanted and hoped that would win the election. They didn't delve into. They weren't on the ground. They weren't in the crowds. They weren't listening to what people wanted. They weren't even really on social media. They were in their echo chamber of bots that they paid to create. Funny enough. So when I'm telling you that this blue wave is not going to happen in 2018, you can take that to the bank. Because I'm not saying it's not going to happen because we don't want, people aren't tired of the Republican Party or people don't want progressives in office. But there's a lot of things that have to happen all at once in between all of that. We can want progressives in office, and we can be tired of these super fundamentalist Republicans. We can be tired of them, and we can want progressives, but a lot of things that have to go right. And a lot of things are not going right. Marie Newman just cheated. Tim Canova had ballots destroyed. In California, several lawsuits right now. Alabama, lawsuits. People pretending as if they're progressive, but actually just looking for a job within the Democratic establishment. And since they weren't originally accepted by the Democratic establishment, their way is to be able to convince the Democratic establishment that they actually deserve a spot is to coerce progressives into joining the establishment, to voting for the establishment, like what happened with Kevin De Leon in California during their convention. There are people who actually thought that Kevin De Leon is a progressive. He's not received any Our Revolution endorsement, any endorsement of any progressive group, like legitimately progressive group, but instead from a bunch of establishment politicians. But there are progressives pretending to be on your side and convincing others that they should vote for people. So there's a lot of discombobulation within the Democratic Party. And if you want to become successful, you must separate yourself from the Democratic Party, whatever way you feel is fit for your area, for your election. And you must show that you are for the people. Like I said, the labels they're nothing. Ironically enough, You all know Tim is a great friend of mine. He did a video stand up the other day talking about how the Republican parties the Democratic Party will rob you, behind your back after they take you out to dinner or wine and dine you, tell you that they're going to take care of police brutality, tell you they're going to address the prison industrial complex. And yet I just left from an event where it was 3/4 Republican, apparently, which I would have never guessed. 3/4 Republicans working with the justice system in order to give felons legitimate employment with livable wages and actual opportunity to progress. And they weren't Democrats. So keep falling into that, left wing, right wing, bipartisan paradigm. If you want to, you'll end up right back where you started from in 2016 with Trump, who apparently people love. So I guess that won't be the bad thing. He has a lot of shortcomings, though. Just to be honest with you, a few things he needs to get right. Like that tax bill is atrocious. And he needs to go ahead and tell the truth about DACA. He's not getting rid of it. He's not getting rid of it. He's not. Sorry. But we're going to be getting ready for our call-in show. If you have not called in, make sure that you do so. I will go ahead and post the link in the comment sections. And then from there, we have actually one of our network members calling in. But anybody can feel free to call in to talk about the Syria conflict. I'm going to touch briefly on some other things as well involving censorship to the umpteenth degree by Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So make sure that you tune in. I'm going to take about a 5-minute break. We'll take it from there.